Hello, this is Keith Kreischer, the Executive Director of the IoT M2M Council, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to track 2 of our IoT Days Winter event presented by the IMC. The topic for this track is IoT in the supply chain, and we will have a 40-minute panel discussion which will be followed by 2 individual presentations of about 10 minutes each. Before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. The webcast today is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. An on-demand version of the webcast will be made available later today and can be accessed using the same audience link sent to you earlier. You can also scroll down to the bottom of your interface to see full biographies on all of our speakers today, as well as to access additional resources that they have provided from their companies. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. The presenters may answer questions at the end of each session, but please feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. We will be able to associate your question with your registration after the event, and any unanswered questions will be responded to offline. Before I introduce today's first session, I'd like to say a quick word about the IMC for those in the audience that may not know us. The IMC is the largest professional organization dedicated to the global IoT sector, with 25,000 product makers, designers, including OEMs, enterprise users, and apps developers that deploy IoT solutions as rank-and-file adopter members. The IMC Board of Governors is comprised of 35 of the most influential IoT technology providers, which are IMC sustaining members, and many of whom you'll hear from today. Our mission at the IMC is to bring the two groups, our adopters and our sustainers, together to accelerate the adoption of IoT technology for the public good. And we look at the session on IoT in the supply chain as exactly in keeping with that mission. With that, I'd like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Fred Jens, who is the principal at IoT Launch. Fred, good morning.
Good morning, Keith. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Fred Jens, the CEO of IoT Launch. We're a consulting services business that engages with enterprises and solution makers to help them realize the values that they can get out of the IoT solutions that folks are trying to implement to build their business, streamline their enterprise. So this is a very exciting topic, and I'm very happy to be joined by three experts in IoT covering their different spaces. And as Keith said, introducing this topic, has IoT taken over the supply chain? What's happening in the supply chain? We all know in the last several years, there's been a lot more visibility into the problems of the supply chain. And I use the word visibility. That is one of the largest challenges. How do we get better visibility into an ever complex supply chain? And one of the things that I think we as a industry bring to that space, and the panelists will bring to that space, is how IoT and the IoT solutions that we provide can provide not just visibility, but condition-based monitoring and other elements that can secure as well as provide a little more predictability into the space. So I would really like to take and introduce now the panel. We've got, and I'm going to introduce quickly all of them, and then they'll each have a session on their own to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their company's solutions. So Adam Daniel, the Vice President of Enterprise Solutions at Losant. Fabian Jordan, he is the CEO of Astrocast. And Gianluca Rodolfi, the CCO of Saddle IoT. So Daniel, why don't we begin with you, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Great. Thanks, Fred. As he said, I'm Adam Daniel. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Solutions at Losant. Losant is what we call an IoT application enablement platform. Really what that means is we have built software from the edge, so edge compute, all the way through to the end user experience to allow people to build IoT solutions faster in a proven, scalable, and secure way. And it's all about simplicity for us. So if you look at other IoT platforms, you may have to piece together some building blocks. Think of us as more of a prefabbed home where you can still move the walls around and customize it and make it exactly what you need. As far as supply chain stuff goes, we play in supply chain in three major areas. One is obviously asset tracking. Knowing where your supplies are, knowing where shipments are, knowing where your assets are is extremely important. And a lot of areas we play in there is abstraction and orchestration of different disparate, so different regions, different companies, different even departments within companies may leverage different providers for asset tracking, hardware providers that may feed up to a cloud environment. And it's very difficult to get that information out or see it under one single instance. So a lot of the asset tracking solutions that we have in play are around orchestrating, integrating with existing hardware, existing platforms, solutions to bring that together, and then ultimately abstract that in a way that is useful for things further down the supply chain. Other areas we focus on are condition-based monitoring, as Fred mentioned. So obviously understanding what the impacts on your supply chain may be, whether that's monitoring manufacturing lines, monitoring fleets, monitoring weather and other environmental or any other impactful aspects of your supply chain. And then lastly, with supply chain, we do a lot with ESG and sustainability, which obviously is getting a lot of press lately around environmental impact and sustainability. And as you all know, your environmental impact starts with your supply chain, and your environmental impact also affects things, customers further down the supply chain. So, as Fred mentioned, providing that visibility to all aspects of asset tracking to environmental impact is where we play a big role. And we don't do hardware, so we are hardware agnostic. We bring information in from any pieces of hardware or any systems out there, and we also don't provide connectivity, where we would rely on partners like our other panelists to actually connect all those things together and provide that information directly into our platform. So I'll segue there, and we can talk to the other panelists.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Next up is Fabian Jordan with Astrocast. Take a few minutes, Fabian, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for having me. I see that my camera, oh yeah, there it is. Can you see me? Yeah. Yeah, so great to be part of this discussion. I'm the founder and CEO of Astrocast. Astrocast is a Swiss company founded in 2014 and based in Lausanne. We are a satellite operator, so we are very much on the hardware side and operating a fleet of a network of satellites. We have currently 20 satellites in low Earth orbit, which makes us the second or third largest satellite operator in Europe by number of satellites, depending on how you count. We are fully vertically integrated. So not only do we operate these satellites, but we also build and test and launch them. And we also provide a product which is a communication module that is integrated in our customers' devices. Maybe we can move to the next slide. Okay. So our constellation is dedicated to the Internet of Things in remote areas, which correspond to approximately 85% of the planet's surface. So really, we are complementing or supplementing the terrestrial network, which currently cover 10 to 15% of the planet. We have market access in 73 countries today, and devices that are currently deployed in over 25 countries, mostly Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Oceania. We operate in the L-band spectrum, which is the most optimized spectrum for this kind of application for direct-to-satellite communication for IoT. We are right next to the GNSS, or the GPS band, if you want. So this is really good because we can optimize thing. We can use the same antenna to receive the GPS signal and to send and receive IoT messages. This further reduce the device size and cost. Also, the part of this L-band spectrum that we use is 5G compatible, which opens up interesting opportunity for us as we grow as a constellation to offer also more connectivity services in the future. It takes a lot of time to build a satellite network and to build reliable operations, but we have achieved this very early last year in 2022, after many years of development, testing in orbit and everything, after a full certification of our products and services. And we officially started our commercial operations in February 2022 with 10 satellites in orbit. Now we have doubled the number of satellites in orbit, doubled the capacity, decreasing the latency of our service, improving the overall performance of our service. And we're very happy about the reliability of this service today. The strategic partners supporting us are Airbus on the data protocol side, Flex on the manufacturing of the module. The European Space Agency also has been highly involved, especially at the beginning of the company. And Turaya is our strategic partner in the UAE for access to the L-band spectrum. Our technology has received many recognitions for its disruptive nature. And we are now nominated also by Viasatellite alongside Apple and their Globalstar collaboration. So we're very excited about this Viasatellite 2022 Satellite Technology of the Year, and we hope that this will also give us more visibility on this new offering. One of the sector where we have currently a lot of traction is the logistics and supply chain industry. That's why we are part of this discussion as well, and we're very happy to tell you more about that. In particular, for the tracking and monitoring of shipping containers, both dry and refrigerated containers need to be connected, and we need to improve the visibility on the global supply chain. And it's a complicated market technically, and from the business perspective, took us quite some time to find the right partners. But we now have a excellent solution built by a system integrator based in Israel. And it's a beautiful product, wonderful service that it's gaining a lot of traction among the key players of the industry. And be happy to tell you a bit more about that after doing the panel. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Fabian. And last is our third panelist, Gianluca. If you could take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I think you're going to hit the button and play a video for us. So I'll leave it to you.
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Gianluca Adolfi. I'm the CCO at SAT IoT. At SAT IoT, we always have been thinking that there's no reason that satellite connectivity has to be expensive and not for any use case. So far, satellite has been really limited in the footprint and the application, basically for the prices of the equipment and for the monthly expenses that you have. And what we have been always thinking and doing at SAT IoT, that started in 2018, so now it's almost 5 years, is that this should be an extension of the cellular connectivity in the sky. Basically meaning that there should be no reason why we should have a different device for cellular or to connect to the satellite. And this has been worked inside the 3GPP, which is the association that set the standards, along with the big names that we all know, like Samsung, Apple, Sony, and Qualcomm, MediaTek, and many others. And we've been contributing to the new standard, which is a new release called Release 17, that actually extends the cellular connectivity for the first time in history to Sky. And we have our first generation of satellites. The first satellite is going to be launched in a month's time, and the constellation is going to be up during this year. And that's actually what we're doing. I have a quick summary of the changing paradigm that we bring to the market, and that's exactly what the next video will tell you all. Let's see if it works. Satellite IoT, standard narrowband IoT from space. Everything, everywhere, connected.
Satellite IoT.
Well, and that's all from my side. So I'm very open to answer any question that might come up. Thank you.
Very good, Jean-Luc. Brings back memories of the mid-'80s playing Atari video games as well. So it's a good segue. Everyone, so very good introductions. I'm pleased that we all had a chance to say a little about what we do here. Again, when we think about supply chain, we think about the complexities of supply chain. The complexities happen because it's a global reach in terms of where these assets go. So geographically dispersed, many of them are going to be on the road and many of them are going to be in maritime containers. So the long haul and the last mile have two very different challenges. The other complexity that I think we can all recognize in supply chain is the vast number of participants between consignees, consigners, shippers, transport, customs agents and brokers, government officials worrying about things like VAT taxes, contraband. There's all kinds of participants. So I'm going to start with you, Adam, and ask a question about, how do you, from a platform point of view, integrate all these disparate assets globally, and you have to figure out how to share data with a variety of constituents, and not all constituents can see the same data. There's a lot of different pieces around privacy as well inside of the supply chain. Tell us a little bit of how that happens.
Yeah, for us, it's obviously it starts with legacy systems. So there are a lot of legacy systems out there potentially. We've dealt with customers that have been using the same fleet management and tracking software for years and years. That may be starting to integrate new asset tracking and new devices, new systems, and everything, or bringing in things like satellite to kind of complete that. So it is complex. Our platform allows us to do this in a low code way. So without having some extremely complex code, We can do integrations through web services. We can have information streamed directly to us from other systems. So one, we make it really simple to grab that information and integrate through a low code environment, which is key for speed to market, right? And flexibility. So if you've got a lot of different disparate systems using the same low code environment to pull information or have the information streamed directly to the platform makes it way easier. And then we take that information and then we typically abstract it. So instead of having uh, information come from and 10 different systems and look 10 different ways. We normalize it, we abstract it, and provide a single API typically that allows other people further down the supply chain visibility into that information. So that's key. It's the integration, the orchestration, and then ultimately the abstraction through event systems and through APIs provide visibility further down the supply chain. And yes, you're right. Obviously, permissions around it, privacy around it is key as well. So using a nice, easy to use API that provides all that abstraction layer allows you to do that as well.
Very good. Um, can, can you guys hear me? It looks like my mic says it's on mute, but I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. So very good.
Now,
So
yes. Yeah.
So what's interesting on what you said there, Adam, is there's a lot more data when it's in real time, and the next two panelists on our panel really provide real time when it's not on land, which has been a problem. So I'm going to go in the order that we introduced ourselves. But Fabian, why don't you talk about the real time attributes and what you're doing when it's not in a terrestrial zone, and then we'll jump back to you to follow up on that, Gianluca.
Yeah, that's an important point. Right now, the service that we offer is not real time. We are not targeting real time application. To give you an idea of the performance that we have right now with the 20 satellites that we have in orbit, it is still in the range of hours, right? So you have revisit times that allows you to send multiple messages per pass, but overall during the day you have a limited number of opportunity to send your messages. So we're targeting markets that are okay with that initially, and as we grow the constellation with more satellites, we can then reduce the latency down to ideally the minutes, right? We're not talking about seconds and milliseconds here. We're talking about minutes in the long term. And right now we are in the hours range. So if you look at the shipping container industry, right, the needs they have is not real time. It's a bit different between the dry containers, which doesn't need that many messages, and the refrigerated containers, which needs a more constant feed of data. But what we see is that the current performance that we have are plenty enough already to attack both these markets. And really, the key, I think, is really, as it is so cost sensitive, is to build a solution that really fits well in terms of lifetime and cost. And the two are very much linked together and linked to power consumption. We can talk about this later as well. But I think if you want to be successful in these remote areas where assets are deployed sometimes for a long period of time, the lifetime on a shipping container is for the tracking device is usually 7 to 8 years. So they ask you to have a device that works on battery and that has to survive for that long period of time. And it's a multi-com device. It does cellular, it does Bluetooth, it does LoRa, and it does satellite. And you have to play with these constraints and switch seamlessly between these different networks and keeping the power consumption extremely low, right? And that's the hard part, is really to put together that solution that can work in different environments. The latency itself. Obviously, you wanna bridge the gap and increase the visibility. But if you can connect your assets, 5 times a day, it's already fantastic from the logistic point of view compared to what's existing today. Oh, I cannot hear you, Fred.
I like to use the word right time instead of real time, because the right time for a container is very different than the right time to a high-speed manufacturing line. So you made that articulation exactly as I would have expected you to. With satellite, however, we don't have 3 weeks or 2 weeks of dead time when it's doing a transatlantic or a trans-Pacific journey. So Gianluca, why don't you take and follow up on that discussion around visibility when it's in a non-terrestrial space, and how you see that and the handoffs to platforms like Atoms.
Well, look, so the key thing here is not necessarily to have the best performance. The key thing here is to make it available. Okay, I think since probably the 90s, since 20, 25, 30 years, satellite connectivity is there. It has been improving, but if you pay, you have been able to have satellite connectivity wherever you want. The point is that then it's so expensive that and so power hungry that basically you cannot put in all containers. So the key thing here is how can we have it like a commodity, like now that we have the IoT on terrestrial everywhere, how can we have it on places where the cellular is not covering? And that's exactly what Fabian has been saying at the end. It's can we have it something with battery that is not consuming power, that it can last 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Okay. Can we have it in all the containers, on all the pallets, all the boxes, and everywhere? Okay. We also have companies that are printing labels with small IoT inside to track really just even the packages. Can we connect all of these? And what would be the enabler of all this? The enablers are the cost of ownership, which is the cost of the equipment and the cost of the connectivity to have it connected wherever it is. So whenever it's on terrestrial, it goes through terrestrial because it's the cheapest and the most convenient connectivity. And whenever it's satellite, it has to be on extremely low cost and low power satellite. So that's what's going to happen. And the demand we see in the market is huge because the previous solution on satellite didn't allow to have a massive deployment on IoT. If you look at even the biggest container companies, without saying any name, they maybe have just a part of their refrigerator containers connected, but not the others. And now we are seeing that this is happening. This is happening because the prices are going down. Then we have a different way to approach it. Okay, we firmly believe on the standard, and that's what we're doing. But the demand on the market at the end, they don't care if it's standard or not standard. What they care is about the price. We think we can offer the best price and the best solution. But clearly, there's a change in paradigm, and this is what is enabling not just in maritime but everywhere. Okay. Ultimately, we're going to see in a few years that we're going to have IoT devices so inexpensive that every single palm tree and tree in many places in the world, we're going to have a small IoT just to check their health, as we are doing on us, the human beings.
Great point. In the shipping industry alone, just maritime containers, and I just Googled something quickly just for the heck of it, that there's probably somewhere around 17 million containers deployed right now globally. That's a lot of trips, it's a lot of boats, but it's a very big number. So when you start multiplying numbers like 17 million times $100 a device or $500 a device, and many dollars or euros per month for connectivity, this becomes a very huge global economic burden on the supply chain. So I do completely respect and understand the comment you made about the total cost of ownership. What do you see as some of the most unique use cases in supply chain, right? You've got the last mile, the 3PLs, you've got the maritime. I would assume that for the satellite folks, you'd love the idea of maritime because you're completely not in the space of terrestrial. But where do you see some of the first big adoptions in kind of the next generation of container monitoring and tracking? And I'll leave that open to all of you to comment on.
Maybe I can take
Perfect,
take
Fabian.
it. The first, so the for us, it's really the first market in front of us that really opens up nicely, and it was not easy to put together the solution. It took time, but we think that it's not only maritime. You know, usually the containers, when it's on the ship, you know where the ship is, right? So you have a pretty good idea of where your container is. Now, there are other elements that you need to know about the container, which as the door being opened, vibrations aspect. There are also more and more trafficking going on these containers. So they're trying to develop solution to help with that. Temperature of the assets inside, etc. So, but what we understand is that having a device that is attached to the container and that follows the container not only over the ocean, but every time there is a transition between the ship and the land, between the train and the trucks, or every time there's a transition, there is a risk of losing that visibility. And in some regions, you have containers being stored and sometimes used by entities, but the owner of the container does not even know this is happening. So there is really a need to increase the visibility on the entire chain. And we have seen demand for both, land use and maritime use. And then there's the whole question that comes all the time about of stacking these containers on the ship. Because if you stack them and make a huge pile of them, it becomes a very difficult environment for signal to be transmitted efficiently. So we did a lot of testing. We stacked containers and did a lot of testing to see how low you can go in this pile of containers and how much you can connect directly to the satellite, and then how much you need to have the ability to connect device to device, so a mesh protocol that allow you to connect container to container. And to achieve that, you need to think about mass connecting the containers. You need a critical mass of container that is connected to be able to start thinking about a mesh network. So these are the discussions we have with the top player in the industry. They would love to mass connect their container. That's where things are going. But to achieve that, you need really to reach the right price. You need to think not only about the device, but the installation cost. How much is it going to cost them to put a tracking device on every single dry containers? If you take MSC, for example, in Geneva, just them as a top one of the industry, they have 5 million dry containers. So thinking about connecting all these containers rapidly is a big endeavor, and you need to think about how we can support them on the whole project, not just the connectivity itself.
Great. Adam,
Fred,
thoughts?
yeah, yep. So obviously containers are a big thing that these guys are talking about and deal with a lot. Where we're seeing a lot of traction right now is kind of in the same line, which is reusable or returnable assets. So in a manufacturing or like pallets or something like that, where it makes its way back. So it's got a little bit more cost to it. So the cost of an asset or the cost of the tracker to track the asset kind of gets absorbed because you're reusing this asset over and over and over again. So think going from a plant to a distribution center, out to the field, back to a DC, back to a plant. So we're seeing people adopt that right now because it's easier with reusable, returnable assets to justify that cost of individual trackers. But as the cost of the trackers go down, as the cost of the hardware goes down, I think we'll see more of this disposable mentality, where even the smaller little assets that aren't returnable or just sealed are going to be tagged with, smaller, potentially even disposable trackers that don't ultimately get returned. But right now, we're seeing a big interest in returnable asset tracking to understand full life cycle of the assets, when they're going to be returned, what DCs are holding on to things, different aspects like that.
Great.
Yeah,
So
actually, we are working now with a company who's doing that I said printing uh, labels with inside a small IoT that they cost probably just few dollars, and
Mhm.
they can connect the lifetime. Actually, the battery they aim to last 3 months, because what they want is just one single trip to be mortared, maybe from the production in Asia to the distribution in the US or somewhere else, and to track the single package. So that's what we're trying to do with them. Of course, it's not
now
it's also
is that
because
package
it's a
directly
new
connected to satellite, or does that go to a satellite, or does that go to a gateway then model, Gianluca?
it can go to satellite, of course.
Right to satellite. So package to satellite.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that would be
Whenever it's
considered
outdoor, of
revolutionary.
course, it can go. Yeah. Yeah. So the main things they're gonna pop up is um, I mean, it's going to take some time, like when we started with the cellular and the first telephone. It's not like the phone that we are carrying now on our pockets. So it will take some time, but the technology is there. And if the functionalities and the prices are adequate, then it's just going to pick up. And I think that the changing paradigm is happening with all this ecosystem of new space, new companies. And IoT takes time because not every company, especially the big ones, are ready to invest and to move on this. Some other smaller are fast mover. And actually, they are the suppliers of the big ones. But we are there to give an opportunity to have satellite connectivity wherever it is required, and basically not think that it's like we're not selling Ferrari. We want to sell 500 to everybody.
Very good. Well, I'll tell you, I think you guys hit the mark in terms of talking about the topic, showing the breadth. Adam, you had some comments around factory whip, moving product and pallets to distribution centers and back. Kind of a more localized element of supply chain. Um, Fabian, you drilled down into some of the attributes of the device maker that you're potentially working with, and talking about technologies around meshing devices and containers and understanding the scope, kind of maritime as well as all the intermodal pieces. And Jean-Luc, you actually brought something up to me that I think is fantastic and amazing. Is can you get satellite, package to satellite? You cover the last mile distribution, high value assets being made in China or Korea or Vietnam and being delivered in Dusseldorf. I can watch that as a manufacturer drop on somebody's front porch for all practical purposes. So, I think we've just stated that IoT can touch supply chain enhancements everywhere with the technology. Uh, I think you all brought to light, everywhere is great, everywhere is possible. Question mark, is everywhere affordable? And that's an element of time and maturity of the market. So we've got about 3 to 4 minutes left. I'd like to give each of you just a minute or so to kind of final thoughts, a call to action. I've been watching the queue of questions. We have not received a ton. I think we've fascinated them, and we've answered some things that maybe people haven't even thought of yet. So I'll start again in the order which we started. So Adam, Fabian, followed by Jean-Luc. You can wrap us up. So Adam, a minute on kind of closing thoughts, and I'll leave the floor to you.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, excuse me. Closing thoughts, really going back to simple visibility, right? Understanding the impact of the supply chain all the way through starts with the data. And companies like Fabian's and Gianluca's are key to providing that information out in the field, ultimately feeding up to companies like ours that takes that information, provides it further down the supply chain. So I think a great panel. Thanks for leading, Fred, and that's it.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
we have all seen the disruptions in the supply chain recently and the impact of that. And it's absolutely critical to increase the resilience and the control on that supply chain. And I think there is a beautiful opportunity for all of us, depending on where we are on the value chain, to seize that opportunity, whether it's on the data platform or on the connectivity providing. I think the field is green, and it's really about really understanding the use case properly and finding the right partners, and really there's a really nice opportunity in front of us.
Thank you, Fabian. Jean-Luc, take us home.
Well, I think that the disruption is there, and the new technologies, especially from space, are are coming to the market. Okay, it took some time, and and there is a clear need of having, as what we say, everything everywhere connected. Not necessarily just on satellite, because there are many other solutions wherever terrestrially you can connect. And we are here to connect the precedently unconnected areas with the best conditions, with the minimal changes for the final user. We are seeing a lot of traction, a lot of pain of customers that weren't able to connect, basically for the reason I explained before, because satellite is expensive and requires sometimes a different change of the ecosystem, change of the device, and so that nobody necessarily wants to do. So the disruption is there, and this is growing, and I think it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable.
I would agree with that, and I think it's a great call for us to revisit this topic of panel, maybe every 6 months or every year, because we will see advancements, we will see adoption, we will see costs go down in what we might think of as a novel idea today may be commonplace when we revisit this. So I want to close by saying, for one, thank you to the panel. You guys did great and completely are masters of your topic. I want to thank the IMC and all of the participants who joined us today to listen to this and who will come in and listen to the recording post the live session. So from an IMC winner IoT Days, I want to turn this back over to Keith, and thank you, Keith, for being the master of ceremonies, and I'm sure we are all looking forward to the spotlights to follow.
Thanks, Fred. Hey, terrific
Thank you very
stuff.
much.
And like you say, thank you, and to the panelists. And satellite is clearly a subject that we need to revisit continually, because there's simply so much going on there.